Hey, and welcome back. We are here talking today about personality styles. And why do you think that matters? Well, because if you have multiple kids, if you have multiple people in your house, that really matters to what happens and how people relate to each other, especially with homeschooling, because y'all are around each other quite a bit, right? So that is what we're talking about today with expert Mindy Green. And I love Mindy. She's so amazing. First of all, she's a really comfortable person to be around. She's just very open and her energy's super great. And I know that she works with parents a lot with brain and she loves personality styles. And this is something that she teaches all the time. She's an expert in this area. If you've heard of the program DISC, which many of you have because it's very popular, that is the style of personality styles that we're going to talk about today. And I teach a very similar one in the inside of our Inspiring Lifelong Learning Academy because it's very important that we understand our kids, how they work, what their intentions are behind it, because sometimes we label that and it is a little different than what we think. And it's important for us to know and identify where people are coming from. It actually helps a lot of things. And Mindy's going to talk about all of that because she has a lot of experience in this area. So we're going to have this really fun conversation today. I hope you're on this journey with us because I geek out on this stuff. I've been training and learning about personality styles for over 20 years. It's been a long time and it's one of my favorite things to teach. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And it is super, when you get in this world, I know Mindy's going to say this, but when you get in that world of knowing the personality styles and you can look at people and like just be able to understand that, oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. So welcome, Mindy. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Cami. And you could tell that I was nodding because I agree with everything that you say. And I geek out on this too. And it's not a regret, but it's my one desire that I would have known it earlier as my kids were younger and we were really in the midst and the mess and the glory of homeschooling.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I love that you're a homeschooling parent too, experienced homeschool parent. You have so much wisdom in this area. And that's something that's going to help us out and help our audience throughout this conversation. And so firstly, I would love for you to just introduce yourself and why you're so passionate about personality styles.
Oh, yes. Well, and I'm going to be trying to be succinct about this, but I often say that, I'm a parent educator and an author. I just published my first children's book back in October, which was a lifelong dream of mine. And I have other parent resources. And one of the things that I kept hearing from parents is about like, why does my kid do that? And so that's what I try to address in everything that I do. So I have a background as a school social worker. I homeschooled my 4 kids for 18 years. Now they are on the other side of that as adults. And I just love talking to people and really hearing their stories because that listening piece is so important because they don't feel seen, heard, or understood as parents and their kids don't either. So how do we deal with that frustration? So that's kind of why I got into the personality piece to give them the information that they needed to be able to understand why this was triggering them so much. And then really how to have a better relationship with their kids so they can learn and grow and to be healthy, functioning adults.
100%. That's what we all want for our kids. I talk about this all the time. This is definitely part of our conversation always. And when I think about personality styles before, and when I look at people who don't understand them, or a lot of us do them at work, right? We've done them in our jobs. What kind of animal are you? Who's your, like, what's your tree archetype? Like something, there's so many. There's a bajillion different personality trainings out there. Why did you choose the DISC program?
One of the things that I love about DISC is how simple it is. And when I say simple, it's not that the personalities of your kids are simple, but when you recognize that there are only 4 categories to remember, 4 different styles. So DISC is actually stands for those 4 different styles. So you have dominant, inspiring, supportive, and cautious. And when you look at those, then it's if you can remember that part of it, then you're well ahead of the game. And oftentimes we're a blend of those things, but you do see one trait that tends to stand out among the others. And so it's just, to me, it's a huge game changer. It's simple for me to understand and easy for parents to implement.
Absolutely. I remember hearing when DISC first came out, I had already been studying a very, very similar uh, personality style model, and DISC first came out, and I remember hearing, what's his name again?
Uh, yes,
I
him.
forget that guy. No worries, no worries. I remember hearing him.
Yes.
And he spoke at an event that I was at. And I was like, oh, I already know all these things. That's really cool. But it was really simple. And I think the fact that it's been so popular has a lot to do with that. And so one of the things I love to do is I love to teach parents about this because it sheds so much light on how we interact with our kids and where we think intentions are, right? So can you
Mhm.
speak about that a little bit about the intentions and how mismatches happen and or interpretations of what a communication, maybe some of the mishaps and then what happens when we do know it?
Yes, I would be happy to do that because everything that I say is something that's happened either in my home or I know someone who it's happened to. So if these are things that I share with you and they sound familiar and you're like, oh, then know that you're not the only one who's dealing with that. Uh, so one of the things that can happen is in terms of mismatch is like, I'm just going to use in my home an example. So my oldest daughter is a high D. And so when I say high, it just means that she has, she scored very highly in that area. So she's, she comes across very confident, competent, capable, and she really likes to be in charge. And so then you have me who I'm an S. I'm very much all about my people and I like to, can't we all just get along is kind of like my motto. And
Yeah.
so my daughter is like lead follower, get out of the way. And so here we are homeschooling and even in kindergarten. And she's like, no, I don't really want to do this. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to do this? Like, let's just try it. Let's give it a try. And I'm like trying to massage her into and really coerce her because I didn't recognize her learning style, her personality. And so she would grow more frustrated. I would get frustrated because I'm like, why does she not want to cooperate with me? Doesn't she understand this is a really great idea? And so there was this mismatch in what our needs were and the way that we were communicating. And this happens in a lot of families. It could be flip-flopped. You could be that dominant parent who really likes to have it's your way or the highway and not in a necessarily a bad way. But just that you have this agenda and everybody's got to follow what you have planned out. And I have another child and Candy, I don't know about your children's styles, but I have another child who's a high I, that inspiring type. And I call him the Pied Piper of people because I never knew when I would come home from
So
someplace
good.
who would be over here, what they would be doing. I mean, they were playing games. They weren't getting into mischief or anything, but he's always been the one that people follow and he's fun and he's funny and all of those things. And gosh, keeping up with him as an S is really hard because I am tired.
It's
I don't have the
exhausting.
same
Yeah.
energy. Yes, because he's also coming up with ideas constantly. And I'm like, oh, okay. And shifting. And so when you have these personalities in your home or at work and you're coming home and and you're dealing with personalities, you can feel like all you're doing is just managing personalities and expectations, the way to communicate. So then having that style, knowing what their particular style is and what they need, just is a game changer because it allows you to just have a sigh of relief, like, okay, here we are, and not wonder if there's something wrong with you, something wrong with him, something wrong with her. And just really, then you could be more intentional, as we talked about, like the intentionality of the way that we communicate, the way that we present things if we're homeschooling to our kids that really meet their needs.
You know that I love that you brought up intention because I say that a lot. And if you're listening to this, if you've heard of me before, you know that that's true. I'm all about intentionality, making sure that everything that we do has a purpose and is meaningful and is getting us to the person that we're trying to raise. And so, one of the things when you were talking about the kids not, being on totally different planes, I actually had one of our Inspiring Lifelong Learning Academy members. She has two girls, and she said one of her daughters was a high I, right? So the inspiring that ideas all the time, and she always had like, today I'm gonna have a garage sale, like, today I'm gonna have a bake sale, and like that was not on the agenda for anybody else, but she would almost like hijack the family into doing this together, and she's like, I want to honor her ideas. I don't want to smoosh her, but I also like she can't hijack our entire schedule. And then her other daughter, but she was always interested in this and interested in that, and interested in that. And then her other daughter was very like you, a high S, so she was very like that kind of just very introverted, but also just even keeled. And she was the older one, and she felt bad actually about herself because she didn't have so many ideas. And she says, look at this, like, why she's so excited about literally everything. And my sister is, you know, she's got all these interests and all these ideas. And like, what am I interested in? I don't know. And so learning the personality styles was really helpful for this mom because she got to figure out, oh, that's who they are. That's their styles. And it doesn't, and when the girls learned it, she taught it to the girls. And when the girls learned it, they, the older daughter started to realize it's not because I'm like lacking in some way that I'm not super inspired butterfly all over the place, but it's because I'm just different. I am interested in things, but it's in a different way. I don't just, I'm not all loud and, you know, task oriented about it necessarily. So I love that. I love that. That's super, super important. And I have story after story after story, but holy moly, you do too. I know you do. And so, but I want to get into, now that we've talked about really the why it's so important, and you can tell already how this impacts your homeschool, right? So let's just talk about the disc itself. I would love for you to teach a little bit about each style so that we can kind of identify for ourselves and our kids kind of just where we land initially.
Certainly. So I often like to say, and I just start with the D because that's the easy place to start, right? So the D and
The
I's
D's would
are
like you to start with them.
absolutely because
I'm
it's
a
all
D.
about them. Love that.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and so D's are, oftentimes we think of them as the leaders. And they're the people who organize and they get things done and they're large and in charge, right? So you might call this person a strong personality. And so if any of that sounds familiar to you, if you one of your kids or you, then know that you're probably a high D, that you like to have input into things and you really are what we might consider a natural leader. And I want to caution us here though, because each one of these different personality types can be leaders. It shows up differently. But that doesn't mean that they can't be leaders. Eyes, like I had said, they are the inspiring ones. These are the ones who are really, they generate ideas. They're really good with people. They're very charismatic. And so for them, one of the things that happens when they get frustrated because they feel like they're not allowing their creativity, their spontaneity is not being, is not allowed to be expressed, then they can get resentful and they can get bored. And then, you know how we often say, use your powers for good. If someone who is an I doesn't feel like they have an outlet for that, then they can turn things around very quickly. And then you have the whole, if you're in a classroom or you're homeschooling, it's like they can turn the whole atmosphere of your home, um, in an instant because
Yep.
that's the way they're expressing themselves. And so then you have the S, who is an introvert. And that's not to say that they don't enjoy being around people. They do. And they really like, it's important for them to have calmness and steadiness, somewhat to know what to expect because they're really tuned into the emotional climate of home or school or wherever they are in the workplace. And these are the people who are going to be like the worker bees. And I say that because they really want people to be successful. They're really invested in those relationships. So when someone feels like this is being blocked, that someone doesn't want to collaborate with them or cooperate or those types of things, or the teamwork that they want to do things on their own, they can become withdrawn because they feel like they don't have, their whole purpose is to be helpful to others and to be in relationship with others. And so when that feels like it's being blocked, then they also can become resentful and then they can also withdraw. And so that's the S. And then we have our wonderful C's and I hadn't said it before, but I do have a daughter who's a C as well. And this is the cautious, uh, they calculate things out. They really like, they're the ones that are just the facts, ma'am. They really like structure. They love their lists and they like to follow a schedule. They really need to know what to expect. And so these people, when you see them, or if you have a child like this, you might see them as a little bit more distant. And it's not that they're not want to be involved. It's just they need to know what's expected of them. What are the expectations? What this is going to look like. And once you have those things taken care of, then they are all in. They're invested because they're great. They're great workers. They're great leaders because they're going to have all the details figured out. And so, like I said, in my home, I have one of each. So I think just recognizing that, what that looks like at home or in a classroom when your child comes home and they're like so frustrated because maybe one of their classmates has said something or done something and they don't get it. This is a way to help them understand, that they just have a different style of doing things. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take away accountability, but it puts a framework around like what that behavior is and maybe what's underneath of it too.
Yeah, and I love the way you talked about the strengths and then there's weaknesses for everyone too. So, and that's important for us to know and the kids to know, right? So, can you speak to a little bit about how the kids knowing their weaknesses, how that can help them, especially in terms of when we're homeschooling, in terms of their learning capabilities and their how they move through the day?
Certainly. So I think this goes back to understanding what their needs are, first of all. And so, and I often say, and this is like with, we see this in a lot of the other, uh, personality assessments too. I'm thinking of Enneagram or Enneagram. I always say that incorrectly. Or there's Myers-Briggs and I don't even, know all of them because
There's
there's
so
so
many.
many. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but with each one of them, what they'll say is if you're not living up to your potential, but if it's not fully expressed, then there are things that it could come out a different way. So it's like when you're squeezing that toothpaste tube and you think it's going to shoot out over here, but then it shoots out the other direction. So that's where we're really learning how to help our kids to be able to express it in a way that's best for them. So with those D's, getting them involved, helping them to talk through things and honoring and respecting their opinions and decisions so that they're not resentful or they're not acting out or we're not having those battles with them because they feel like it's giving them dignity. And this is
Yeah.
true for all of them,
Mhm.
that this is a gift. And so recognizing when maybe things have gone awry for them so that when, maybe they're extra bossy or they're putting their foot down and just saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Then being able to step back, which is so hard in the moment, being able to step back though and think, well, what's beneath this? And oftentimes it's an unexpressed need or an unmet need. And that's where that toothpaste is going this way rather than that way with the D's. And with I's, again, goodness, I could also be impulsive. And so that's where that I don't want to say a weakness, but it can come out expressed differently, right? Because you want to tap into their excitement and their enthusiasm. And you also know that things are going to have to be routine as well. So, but being able to pair them with someone else, so that they have the social aspect and that they're able to express themselves in that way. They do really well in groups. And, so being able to allow them to do that. So this isn't a kid who you might want, who would work well all the time on their own because they
Mm-hmm.
need to have that opportunity to socialize, to express themselves, be creative, be silly, be funny, all the different things that we might think about with an I.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our wonderful S's and C's. So the S's, again, they really, similar to the I's, they really love teamwork. And so for them, you don't want them to be withdrawn. They can, and because they're so in tune to the people around them and into their environment, they can also be people pleasers. So for them, it's to really help them understand that, yes, we want to work with other people. We want them to feel good, but it's not always our job to fix everything. And they don't have to carry the emotional load for the home or for their workplace or wherever they are, because I'm thinking of our kids as adults, growing into adulthood. So, you have those teens who are maybe have their job, a summer job or, a job during the school year, and they might be saying yes to too much and then exhausted later. And so this is something that you can help them with as they are really embracing who they are. And then our amazing C's who have such an attention to detail. And one of the things for them is to help them to recognize that they do have this need for structure and organization and not to be, I would say, too rigid about this, that, sometimes they are going to need a little flexibility. I'm not saying please do not throw away their schedule, their calendar,
That's it.
anything like
We're
that.
out.
Yeah, on your own, buddy, with this. No, but it's, giving them little instances and opportunities to practice flexibility. And this is really with all of them. These are skills that can be developed and practiced. And also when you teach them about like their strengths and what could look like a weakness, you're empowering them. And that's, I think, is so important for our kids, whether they're 5 or 15 or 25, is for them to feel empowered and to know, to be able to stand in their worth as a person, a unique, special person with their God-given, talents and abilities, and to be able to work through these things. So the knowledge and the information is so valuable.
Absolutely. And I also love that brought up how they work best and also what tends to trip them up. And that's important for them to know because it's for my son is a high C, but he also transfers a lot depending on what situation he's in. He's also in the S category as well, very supportive, very peaceful, peacemaker sort of person. But then he's had to learn, right? So he's had to learn that as a high C is somebody who's very analytical, somebody's very logical, mathematical, that it's not always like life isn't always like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, and that can has tripped him up a lot. And especially in martial arts where there is like a pattern, but then there's also creativity, and that creativity part, he's like, well, wait, there's a pattern. There has to be a should. And I was like, no, they're trying to get you to use your tools in a different way. So, creatively. And he's like, I don't get it. So it happens a lot. It happens a lot. And as high Ds, we can, oh my gosh, we can bulldoze people. Like I always say, those people leave, you can always tell a high D when they leave dead bodies in their wake. Like there's dead bodies behind them because it's just, I mean, a bulldozer sometimes. And that my way or the highway thing is for sure. And this happens a lot. So I have, I remember a mom, uh, a friend of mine, and before I was even working with homeschool families, I saw her with her son who was a high C. She's a high D, high I, right? So she like really loves people. She loves being creative. She loves just doing different things. And she was doing an art project and her kids wanted to be involved. They were painting rocks. And then her everybody was done. She was literally like cleaning up and her high C is like really getting frustrated because he can't complete his rock, right? He can't
Oh,
complete it and he wants to give it to a friend and it's not perfect. It's not how he envisioned it to be. He can't get it like that. And she just wants to clean up and move on. So she's putting pressure on him. Just finish up. Just finish up. Just do something. And he's like, but what? And he's like, could you do it for me? She's like, I'm not going to do it for you. That's just do something. Just paint something. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, I mean, this kid was in tears. It was so hard. And I'm just seeing like this personality style happening, this headbutting of two different intentions, right? And she doesn't understand where he's coming from. And I know you have too, but you've had like for each kid, you've had to change and modify your parenting style for each kid, right? Based on their personality style.
oh, and Cami, yes, I'm nodding. Yes, yes, yes. And I'm shaking my head because, oh gosh, it was a mess.
I know.
Because, I wanted to buy one curriculum that everybody could use. And, and we were going to all learn together and it was going to be wonderful. They would sit at my feet and just lap up the words of wisdom that were coming off my tongue. And, no, that didn't happen. Like we were like 2 days in and, oh, this isn't working out well. And so yes, we want like kind of like one-stop shopping. And at the same time, you do have to change the way that you approach each child. Is it tiring? Yes. But what I can say is with practice, and here comes that practicing these skills, then you become in tune to it.
Yes.
Whether you start out that way or you figure it out a little later on, it's okay because you've got lots of information now to use and say, okay, well, what could I have done in that moment? I think that the example that you used with the high D mom with the high C son, yeah, gosh, I can imagine transitions are very difficult for them because they want to be precise and they want to do their very best. And that's so ingrained in them to do that. And sometimes, also when you have that extroverted parent and they want to go, 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 and they want to do, 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 for our S's and C's, they need to recharge in a different way, not just because they're
Hmm.
introverted, but because they process the world differently and it can be loud and it can be overstimulating. So they need to have that time to be able to back off and reset, not just from people, but from also loud, for them, challenging environments.
Yeah. It's draining for them, right? So
Yes.
yeah, it totally is. And I see that. So my friend and I, she's very actually a DC. So she's very much on the task oriented side and the non people side. And then I'm very like DI. So I'm very people like, and we were both at this event and we are tasked to greet people at the door. And for me, I'm like, yay, I get to greet people at the door. It's so fun. And she was like, okay, let's go, and she after about 20 minutes of people coming in and I'm like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And she was like, I need a break. I need to go sit down. I'm exhausted.
Yes.
I'm energized. I get that from people. Whereas for her, it was draining. And she was like, that's too much people.
Yes. Well, and I often say to people with myself, and I'll just use this as an example, that I'm a chatty introvert. And so, I'm really good until about like 4 o'clock, and we can chat, we can collaborate, we can do all kinds of things. But after 4, or, I'd say around dinner time, probably when my husband gets home and he wants to talk, and I'm like, I do not want to talk. Please don't make me say anything. And so that was something that he and I had to work out too. So you can
I
see this
love that.
among partners and spouses too.
Oh, the spouse thing is so freeing. I honestly think it's such a freeing thing to understand personality styles. That's one of the reasons why I teach it. And I actually teach it right before we choose curriculum in our program because it tells
Oh,
us it helps us understand what to choose, but combined with all the other things that we have to put in place before that. And one of the reasons why I hate when people say, I understand it, I totally get it, but when people say in Facebook groups, what's a good curriculum for a third grader? Like, there is so much involved in that question. Please don't even answer. Like, let's have a conversation about that because there's so much in there. So I love, and for your spouse, I think it's so freeing just in general knowing those. And I know you walk through the world and you see people like this. And my son does that too. He can say, oh, that person's very high D. Oh, and he understands that they don't necessarily intend to be offensive.
No. Yeah.
That's just how things come out. And
It's the way it's
so,
expressed, right?
yes. And so it's
Yes.
you end up giving a lot of grace to people. Like, I know you didn't mean it like that. That offensiveness wasn't directed towards me. Or I know you're not talking to me not because you don't like me, but because you're just thinking about stuff.
Right. Because we're offended by the things that we don't understand. And when we
Mhm.
can increase our awareness, recognition, and understanding, then it frees us from taking everything. And some personalities more like that, like the S, like taking these as personal slights because it's not about us, it's about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said we were going to go over, and I know we are because I said for 30 minutes, but I geek out on this so much. Tell me how it helped your kids interact with each other.
Hmm. So I'm going to say that when I first began homeschooling, I used the book Cynthia by Cynthia Tobias, The Way They Learn. And so
Mhm.
I found that really insightful. So that helped a bit because I was like, oh, what are we doing here? And then, every other year I was adding in a new child, so to speak. So every second year I was adding in another one. And so I was like, how is this going to work? And it was interesting because my oldest daughter being the dominant style, she really wanted to have a lot of say in things. My other daughter, who is a C, was like, just tell me what I need to do, when I need to do it, and how, and where you want it. And so for them to be able to understand that was really helpful because then my dominant daughter, which she would actually, and it took time and it wasn't always perfect, but she would make space and room. She would slow down a little bit. Her pace was different
Mm.
when she was dealing with her sister because she knew that her sister needed a little more time, not because she couldn't get it. She processed things differently. And so I think it gave them a little more, like you had said, grace for people, like some compassion because they understood. Now, is that completely, was it completely foolproof? Absolutely not, because they also are siblings. And the not so hidden truth about all of this is that they're not going to get along all the time and they're not going to
No.
like each other. And, at the same time, though, it gave us a framework to be able to go back and look at interactions that they had and say, okay, well, your brother who's a high I and he wanted to do this. And it's like he has 25 people over in our living room. So for my S and C children, like they were like, okay, well, I'm going to go up to my room.
Yeah, why are there so
So
many people here?
yes, exactly. Where did they all come from? So it gave us though that ability to talk about things and in a way that they understood.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And so you can see, I mean, life is life, and their siblings are also maturing adults. There are maturing kids. Their brains are not really developed yet. So
Slowly.
while we can have those understandings, we're still very emotional about things. So it's a good, but I love how you put it, it's a good framework. It's a good something to come back to say, hey, remember, like, so what personality style is they? What does that tell us about them? What is, how can we relate to them differently? It's so powerful. It's so powerful. I hope you're hearing this and you can study this too. And before we wrap up here, I definitely want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you and how you help parents. So I know that you help them with personality styles, but you also help them in many other parenting ways. So can you please share with us just how you help parents and how we get in touch with you?
Certainly. So I do help parents through understanding personalities. So I have a program called the Parenting Blueprint that is a self-paced course that is available. And I think it really gives you a good foundation of what we've talked about in greater depth today. I also have a wonderful book I call this my my heart project, and I've been wanting to write it for years. It's called The Parent Reset, and it's coming out in October, and there will be a course to go with it. And this is all about nervous system regulation and how change and the atmosphere of our home starts with us, like what we have internally, and then it filter and it goes out from there. And it does have personality insights in that as well. And then with that, then you can reach out to me. And I have plenty of resources as well. I have a wonderful guide that I'm actually giving as a free resource today. It's called Understanding Your Child's Personality, Solving the People Puzzle. So you'll have a bit of an understanding of what we were talking about today and how this might look in your home or in your workplace or wherever you find yourself dealing with other people. And so I have plenty of other free resources as well on my website, which is mindygreencoaching.com. Or you can reach out to me and send me an email at mindy@mindygreencoaching.com. I'm here for you. I have a monthly newsletter. I have emails that go out each week providing a little bit of insight. So I would love for you to follow me and just let me support you.
Absolutely. I encourage you to do the same thing. It's a really freeing thing when we can start with ourselves. One of the system that I studied the most was called Personality Plus by Florence Littauer, and it's virtually the same system. It's just different names. But but one of the things, her subtitle of the book was understanding others by understanding yourself. And I love that it's exactly what you're teaching is like let's understand parents and then we can help our kids, right?
Mhm.
I love that.
Because
Beautiful.
oftentimes we think we look outward like, well, what's wrong with my kid? And how do I get him to just sit down? And we're triggered. And so it's so helpful for us to be able to focus a bit on ourselves too, because it's a gift that you give yourself. And then it's something that everybody in the home benefits from.
100%. Awesomeness, Minnie. Thank you so much. We could keep talking for like another hour, but I'm sure we're going to have you back on again. So make sure that you follow this. And if you found this helpful, which I know you have, send this to somebody else. Send this to another parent who can use the same information. You're going to get all the Mindy's contact information and the free gifts that she has in the show notes. And just share it with somebody else. It really helps us move this train forward. We want to help as many parents, both Mindy and I do, to make sure that your day is not crazy. It doesn't have to be crazy. Some days will be crazy, but most days shouldn't be crazy if we can actually help ourselves and then help our kids in the same way. So awesome, guys. I will see you again next week. And thank you, Mindy, for joining us.
Thank you.